We can get him on. Let's see if this works. Fingers crossed. Connecting. There he is, ladies and gentlemen, from Queens, in Queens, for Queens. Mel Gagarin, how you doing, man?
Good, good. Good to see you, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. You've got a giant map behind you. I can see.
Yes, I do. That's the beast that is the district.
Yeah, it's probably not everybody's cup of tea when it comes to dining room decoration, but for you guys, it's essential. Um,
Yeah.
I want to, I want to, before I dive in about you and your campaign and everything, um, I just want to hear from you how fucking crazy it is to be running a campaign out of an apartment in New York City.
Yeah,
What?
it sucks, I guess is the best way to put it. Uh, because like the office is the home space. There's no getting away from it. And so like, we're pretty much working now like 24 hours a day because there's no walking away from the campaign pretty much. And like, because like everything is now digital, like there's no excuse either. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's melforprogress.com. I'm going to ask you specifics, important information about the primary because it's ever changing, not because of what's happening with the pandemic, but with other things that are happening legally because of the Sanders campaign and everything. But first, a
yeah.
little back about you. So tell me a little bit about yourself, and we'll get into how we met and all that other.
Yeah, so bio-wise, like I was born and raised in Elmhurst here in Queens. I was raised by my mom and my abuela in a one-bedroom apartment. And it was, like the traditional New York late 80s, early 90s working class lifestyle. Did all the right things, went to school, went down to AU to get my degree. That's where I met your ass. Came back, decided to work in politics in the beginning. So I worked for a New York State senator. I worked for a congressman for a bit. And I ran for city council in '09, and that didn't work out. And so like I was done with electoral politics. I wasn't particularly looking for a career in government at that point. And so, I just stayed focusing on issues I cared about in the nonprofit space and criminal justice reform before I became a stay-at-home dad for a bit. Obviously took Scarboro out on the road and was doing the music thing. But the world is a mess. And, when I look at the Democrats today, they clearly haven't done what needs to be done to push back on this president. And so here I am running for Congress now.
You just covered an awful lot very quickly. I get the sense
Yeah.
that you've been doing a lot of these interviews.
Yeah, yeah. You got to get it in quick.
You got to get in with the time you have. Well, with all due respect to all of my competitors that are out there, the other shows, the Fallons and the others, the Berman Hour is really a place for you to marinate on what you've accomplished and what you've done, and we'll talk about what you're doing as well. You have a background in punk rock and hardcore, much like I do, and I know that you consider being cut from that cloth as an integral part of your being as a campaigner and also as a politician of sorts.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think? Because, like you said, you ran for city council in New York City in '09, but before that, you were doing music, and then you kind of took a break from music to do the
Parenting.
campaign. And that was really focused on doing music again with Scarboro, and now
Yeah.
that's kind of holding your back into politics. What has the transition between the two? What have you learned from that, and how has it helped you, both in terms of the politics helping you as a musician, and then being involved in that sort of music scene helping you in politics?
Yeah, I mean, so definitely the latter has played more strongly this time. With doing music in college and stuff like that, it didn't really get out as much as I would have liked. But picking it back up later in life, we got to tour. You get to see parts of the country that you only hear about on CNN. Like, you on the road, you get to go to Trump country, and like people that
Yeah.
show up to shows, like there's not like an ideology check at the door, right? Like you end up bonding with folks, at shows over the music and like their lives, and like the politics doesn't really exist, right? Like you get to really get to know each other as humans, and knowing at the back end, sort of what are the policy failures that have been in place that make this town the way it is, right? It really gives you like sort of a front row seat, but also able to communicate better, right? Because I think that when people think of like right and left or pro-Trump or anti-Trump or whatever, you believe strongly what you believe ideologically, right? But you're not going to convince somebody, by browbeating them with like, your hoity-toity academic understanding of like, democratic socialism, for instance. But you can find like a common ground around, those music and those experiences that you shared. And then obviously the DIY ethos, for us as a grassroots campaign, we take nothing for granted, like our team is really closely knit, but like what we brought into the campaign is the ability to do anything and everything myself, right? Like I'm not above doing any little
Yeah.
portion of the campaign, not in terms of micromanaging, but like because obviously there are time constraints and there are obviously better uses of the candidate time sometimes, but as much as possible trying to bring that grind to the campaign and not get tired over little things or sort of complain about things not working out, always kind of adapting. And like the virus did the ultimate for us in trying to figure out how do you adapt. It's like having the band bust a tire halfway through your tour,
Yeah.
where you got to kind of figure out how you're going to finish it.
Yeah, it's kind of a sense of being forced to think about the world outside of your own existence, even if you're not touring and you're just listening to that kind of music at home. And then when you tour, like you said, you kind of get to experience it and see it firsthand. But what specifically compelled you to run for Congress? First of all, where is the 6th District of New York?
So sixth district is pretty much central and northeast Queens, and it's like the only congressional district in New York City in which it's entirely comprised of just one borough, because everybody else has like a little bit of Brooklyn or the Bronx or whatever, but we're 100% Queens. So pretty much from Ridgewood in the west all the way out to Bayside, and then we have Flushing up north and a little bit of Richmond Hill and Jamaica down in the south.
Sure. For New Yorkers, that's all going to make a lot of sense. I think for people
Right.
that are outside that base of understanding, there is a lot of gerrymandering throughout the country, but a lot of areas where people are represented are kind of these big blocks of land, especially middle America. But when you get into LA and into New York, you see how kind of contorted and messed up. But yes,
Yeah.
explain what compelled you to want to run for Congress and to challenge Grace Meng in the upcoming Democratic primary.
Sure. So, like, the short version was, 2016 happens, right? We get Donald Trump. And there's this idea, right? And I think especially in like political circles, so the professional political circles, that like there were going to be adults in the room, or like the system was going to keep him in check. And we saw that wasn't the case, And then 2018 comes around, and, you have AOC makes it in, and there's this blue wave, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, fine, there's going to be like a resistance finally. And what you end up seeing is that the Democrats are outclassed, right? They're outclassed, they're outmatched. Like Trump has been running circles around them, and it like became apparent to me that Trump isn't an anomaly. It's not some one-off circus clown that happens to be president. He's the natural result of a broken political and economic system that allowed him to come into power in the first place. And Democrats have played a role in that. And I think as Democrats, it's easy to sort of look the other way and say, oh, we're working with the other side because that's just the way things get done, right? We have to compromise because that's how things get done. But those compromises come at the expense of working people. Those compromises are giveaways to corporations. Those compromises are, giving Donald Trump more money for the military budget than he asked for. That it's giving money to ICE and the Department of Homeland Security for their border enforcement, or carrying out pretty much what we all know are racist policies, and I think that's come to the fore even more so as the administration's been in power longer. And so someone like Grace Meng, who's like the vice chair of the DNC, sits on the Appropriations Committee, has been there for 8 years. I think out of all of the bills she's ever introduced, she only has one that's ever become law. She did things like voted against the Iran deal when Obama was in office, which is terrible if what we want to be doing is, changing our foreign policy so that we're ending these endless wars. She takes a ton of money from the real estate industry, and we have a lot of these banks that are bankrolling development in our district, that are pushing out immigrant communities, that are pushing out working class folk. And to me, there is very little daylight now. I used to shirk at the comparison between Republicans and Democrats when people say, oh, they're the same party. I was like, well, that's not entirely true. But, as the years have gone on, when you look on the merits, when you look at where the money comes from, when you look where the money goes, when you look at where the votes go, they're placed to help working people. Right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're literally leading the world in deaths, right, over the coronavirus, and Democrats are still resistant to Medicare for all. Right, we have a situation where Democrats are now offering up bailouts to shore up the private health insurance industry. That's fucking insane. And the one thing that I keep telling everybody is, like, this is it. This is now or never. If you're not a political person, like, now's the time to get political, because if you believe that everybody, has a right to health care, this is the only time it's going to happen. If in the face of all of these people dying, if watching the healthcare system collapse, of watching, people going bankrupt over having to pay their medical bills, if we can't get this passed now, if we can't muster the political will to make this happen, it's never going to happen. And I don't want to stand on the sidelines and let that be the case.
Yeah, no, good for you. I think it's really easy. And I'm guilty of it, from Monday morning quarterbacking and being a Twitter activist and doing all of that because I now have a platform and it's easy. But to actually put your money where your mouth is and upend your entire life, your personal life and your professional life in order to do this, it's really quite something. Before the pandemic hit, what do you think was the biggest issue facing your hopefully your future constituent in Queens?
Yeah, definitely housing. Like the affordability crisis in New York is obscene. It's not just working class folk that were. I mean, obviously, they face the most direct brunt, right? When you have developers that are coming into their neighborhoods and like pretty much kicking them out, displacing them, making it unaffordable for them to be there, and kicking out small businesses that are locally owned, especially immigrant-owned businesses. But folks that traditionally consider themselves, middle or upper middle class, that for whatever reason are still in the rental market. The rents continue to skyrocket. You end up living paycheck to paycheck, even when you shouldn't be. And so making housing affordable that's always sort of been a challenge in New York in the past decade or so. But I think it's been exacerbated because you go up and down Queens Boulevard and you're seeing like half empty condos just sitting there, and that obviously has an effect. And when they provide affordable housing, it's not affordable because it's based on the area median income, which is not like, if it were based on zip codes is one thing, but they're determining the median income based on a large geographical area that includes like Connecticut and whatnot. And so you end up with rents that are supposed to be affordable but are far out of reach for even middle class folk.
It's so skewed. What do you think now is the biggest issue facing your area of Queens amidst this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's still going to be an evergreen thing, but really, the Medicare for all thing for me has really become more and more important. I mean, the coronavirus, we're in the epicenter of it. Like Elmhurst Hospital is at the very edge of the district. The rest of that area falls under AOC's purview. But we see and we hear almost on a daily basis, like it hasn't slowed down that much. Like thankfully the curve has been flattened somewhat in New York, but you still hear the sirens coming in and out. The fallout from COVID-19, I think, is going to be huge. Every problem that finds its root in income inequality that existed prior to this is only going to be made worse after that. We have a lot of frontline workers that live in the district that are not getting the support that they need now, and are going to need it once this is over. And I'm not confident in the Democrats' ability to deliver, because again, we're always negotiating with ourselves, right? Like, I mean, I think we even do that as Democrats, like, individually, right? Where we have like this phantom Republican that is like a rational actor, that just has like a certain idea about the world, but we're not dealing with that. And that's the thing, like, look, you don't think that I want to be like Captain Loved, right? That I don't want to be like the most moderate. Like, I can make their arguments for them and be like, look, we must be pragmatic. Incrementalism is what's necessary because policy, like I know how the fucking sausage is made, but what I'm telling you is the house is on fire. We can't just be like, oh, we got to use the garden hose just to get started, just to see how the fire reacts to the water first, right? Like, we need to get all hands on deck. And that's what terrifies me the most. What terrifies me the most is that I think it may be too late. In politics, you have to be hopeful, and as a candidate, you got to be, talking about like the future and making people feel good. But like that's part of what got us here too, right? It's like when we look at like an Obama, who in '08 I voted for him, right? And we wanted to believe that we are better than the other guys, right? We want to believe that there are like this cadre of rational actors out there who will really care about what's best for the country. And unfortunately, because of corruption, because of kind of a slew of failures, we haven't become that. And I'm afraid that we're a little bit too far down the road to bring us back from the brink. Even when I see folks, even amongst the left, starting to fight against each other at this point, where it's like, guys, like this is it. Like this is the 0 hour. Any moment that you've ever thought about, like this is the time that we all have to participate. This is the all time that we're going to have to make some tough choices. This is it. And again, when it comes to Medicare for all, I think that's the one, because we all know somebody, either directly or a friend of a friend, that's been affected by this in one form or another, either as a worker, someone who's died, someone who's gotten it. Like, I lost a teacher from high school to COVID, right? Like this is real. And if something that is so there and something that we can all agree is a right, that we're the richest country in the world and we can't take care of our own, then what the hell are we doing?
Yeah. Just a comment I wanted to make about something you said. I think that a lot of our, and I say our, like the proverbial our, politicians that I think people like you and I really resound with, have to kind of dumb themselves down in the public sphere in order to be either better understood or in a better place of negotiating. And I think that Obama kind of did that for maybe the last 6 years, where once the Affordable Care Act was passed, after that it was just kind of like, well, I'm not that progressive. I'm a normal guy. I'm with the normal folks, and it just kind of dumbed it down. Something that I like about AOC and the Knock Down the House documentary, two things. One, like I said, I loved the fact that these people were operating out of their homes or these really shitty offices or their apartments, like you are in New York, and it really put the focus on the fact that everyday people can get involved not only in the political process but run for it. But also, all of these progressive politicians and aspiring politicians, they have a different way of talking. That even if I don't agree with every single one of their policies, I know that they're talking from experience that is a shared experience of something that is similar to what I've been through at some point in my life. Whether it be a citizen in a city or somebody paying rent or working in having certain work experiences. And I'm sure it's the same for you as being, a parent. What did, if anything, that documentary kind of bring about in you? Because I think the American public who are going to be paying attention to the election in 2020 are going to be talking about a blue wave again, and they're going to be trying to kind of galvanize that same sort of support. What did that really elicit within you, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I think it was AOC's campaign in general, for me, was a restoration of faith. I told you I ran in '09. I used to work in Democratic politics. And, like, for me, what turned me off, so it was two things. One, once I lost, it was like, those were the Obama years. It was like, things aren't where I want them to be, but, like, we'll get there eventually. Like, this is the first step. Like, what could possibly go wrong? Is one. And second was just because there's so much bullshit. And I'm just, like, I see it now, right? So, for instance, and this is a great example, and I can't imagine my opponent's watching, so she's not going to hear it, right? So, there's a post office in the neighborhood here in Kew Gardens. Like, she's like, oh, I saved the post office, right? You didn't save the fucking post office. And I know you didn't save the post office. Why? Because when I worked for Anthony Weiner, the same community members came with the same concern over the post office location. It's a lease that just gets renewed, like that gets negotiated, oh yeah, yeah, we called up too. We asked them what happened. In those days, they were like, all right, like we don't know exactly what's going to happen. Eventually, they were, of course, they're going to renew the lease. They renewed the lease, boom, right? But like people see through that, right? Like people in the district, like not everybody is going to get suckered into going, oh wow, like like people are aware when they're being sold a bill of goods. Like how long have we been fighting for the environment? I was looking at old pictures from '09, and there's a picture in the old apartment, and in the background it's like single payer now. That was 10 years ago, bro, or 11 years ago now, right? 11 years ago. And what happened to that, right? And like every time that always fighting for down, where to go? Corporate bailout there. They're coming through for folks. And so like I bullshit and just you're talking to them like the people that they know. People. When I think of, we talk about pumpkin heart tournament in the non-political world about do I get back in this is like, September was it? Or Murphy's Law, he had a really tough health shit go on, right? Stones headlined that shit. Somebody, dude, right? Like, how is it somebody that's like a legend, has that band is sort of.
Mel, are you there?
Yeah, action.
Yeah, I think we're having a bad.
We both have.
Why don't you reconnect?
Frozen to me. Oh, you know what? But let me see if
It's still frozen. I don't know if I'm frozen on my end for you, if you are just for me. He's trying the Wi-Fi. Well, in the meantime, melforprogress.com. You can get all the information about Mel, his background, his stances, his policies, some great policies that I'm going to ask him about momentarily. But also, if you live in the area, if you live in Queens, double check to make sure which district you live in. If you live in New York City, Mel for Progress has information for you that's very valuable. Even if you don't live in Mel's district, his website is a great place to go to find out how to vote by absentee and how to get all that information, which we'll talk about in a second. All right, you're back. I can see you.
Yay!
All right, cool. So you were saying something about Jimmy Gestapo from Murphy's Law.
Oh, yeah.
So,
but, to have, like the Bostons come in to do like a benefit to like help Jimmy pay his medical bills. And this, again, somebody who was like in this legendary band, everybody knows Murphy's Law, toured with the Beastie Boys back in the day, like during that ridiculous tour. That's eye-opening, right? Like, here's this thing. And it's like, you think you're gonna have a conversation with Jimmy G about like, in woke speak? Like, absolutely not, right? But like, that's a real thing. Like, this is like an old school, like Queens working class dude that, is not the image of what Democrats think like a working class person is supposed to be, right? But they're the people that we have to convince that, like, we need to move things forward. We have to be able to reach folks like that. And there's nothing more I don't know, that compelling, I guess. Like, that's one of those things where it was just like, holy shit, like, this is crazy. Like, here's this legendary person that we all have to like come out here and do this gigantic concert. Like, what happens to the Jimmy G's that aren't in a Murphy's Law, right? That encounter the very same thing, and that they're not going to have like thousands of New Yorkers come out to like help pay their medical bills, nor should they, right? Like, that's why we have a government in the first place that we are comprised of. Like, we have an obligation to take care of each other, and we should.
Yeah, it's kind of like what makes our subculture so unique and special, and is also simultaneously such a bleak reminder of the state of the world outside of that subculture.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you that I know is near and dear to your heart, but is really one of your most forward and coined policies, because you've really kind of put a name on it. And that's the Golden Years Security Act. And that's focusing on helping people in your district, which there are a lot of them that are senior citizens. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that the fight is now or never for Medicare for all. But no matter what, even if we get full agreement, it's going to take some time to get that into play. And
Yeah.
I feel like our elders deserve to be taken care of, no matter how well or how poorly they did in life. Like you remember when my grandmother was, in her final year, like that was tough on us. And we had my mom who was a nurse, and me and Alita that were able to go and help when she was in that rehab for seniors after her heart surgery. But even then, like Alita was taking like gauze to help change her wounds because the nurses were like all overworked and underpaid. And that's a tragedy. And I think of like families that are in like Alita and I's position now that, they have young kids that are going to be going to college eventually. And they also have their parents who are retired. Like, how are they going to take care of them, right? Like, how are they going to afford nursing care or nursing home care if they need it, or to have a home care services at home at the same time, put their kids through school and also put away for retirement? It's nearly impossible. And so what the Golden Years Security Act aims to do is to fill the gaps between Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, pretty much ensure that any healthcare needs for our elders are fully subsidized, and that we transition into nationalizing nursing care services. I mean, I think right now, especially here in New York, you're seeing how COVID-19 has essentially ravaged nursing homes, and it's only coming to light now. And so I definitely think that this definitely exemplifies why we need more transparency and accountability. Make sure that our nursing homes are properly staffed, that they're getting paid a living wage, that it's a safe workplace for workers, and also for the LGBT community, which is something that doesn't get really thought about a lot, is that some folks have to go back into the closet when they go into the nursing homes. We want to make sure that there's discrimination protections there, and for older trans folk, that their unique medical needs are also covered and taken care of, and that there's space for them to live a dignified life in their final years here on Earth. And again, for families like Alita and I, if we don't want to put mom or dad in the nursing home, and we want to find a way to be able to care for them at home, we should be able to cover that as well. Because every your final years on Earth shouldn't be worried about whether or not you can afford your medication or your doctor or your home care services, or to have to unfortunately be outside of your home in places where you're comfortable with and with your family, and instead in some dorm situation. We want to make sure that you live out your final years where you want to live them out, and that they're covered.
Right. So June 23rd is the election day, but
technically,
exactly. And we know that at least as of a couple days ago, there are still going to be in-person polling places. But my understanding is that your campaign is trying to get people to not participate in that for their own safety and the safety of others. So in terms of the absentee, can you walk us through the process clearly so that people listening can understand how they can vote and when they can vote and the process they need to go through? It starts with the absentee application.
Application, right? So to put it kindly, it's kind of a clusterfuck. Right now, the plan supposedly, according to the governor, is everybody's going to get mailed an application to apply for an absentee ballot, at which point you get that in the mail, you fill it out, you send it in, they'll send you the ballot, you fill that out, you mail it in by June 23rd, and you should be able to vote. There's also a website that's set up in which you can request an absentee ballot, and then they're supposed to send that to you as well. The dates seem to be changing as to when those ballots are going out. And then also the state attorney general is appealing the recent ruling that put Bernie back on the ballot. They're trying to keep Bernie off of the ballot. So we don't know if that's going to affect the absentee ballot applications or not.
It's a weird variable. It's just a weird X factor that's kind of timeline shift, which isn't good for anybody.
Right, and the early voting is supposed to start June 13th, so people can technically still vote in person. Because we've been following the science and the story. Like we're letting folks know, just vote absentee, be safe. Especially because poll workers aren't exactly spring chickens. The governor knows this. Everybody knows this. That a lot of the folks that really put themselves out there on election day are our elders as well. So it's that's a concern that we have going into it. But it's a little bonkers. So technically, as soon as you get a ballot in the mail, which some people have been getting in other districts, you can start voting. So by June 23rd is the end date for sure. And absentee ballot is what we're recommending people follow through on just for public health reasons.
So either be on a very visual lookout to be receiving in the mail a application to vote absentee. And if you get that, fill that out, and then you will receive an absentee ballot. You fill out that ballot, and then that's how you vote. Or you can go online, go to your website, melforprogress.com, in order to find out where you can apply online or
Yep.
apply over the phone to get an absentee ballot sent to you. Right?
That perfect.
Yeah. They don't make it easy, you know.
Yeah, it's bonkers. It's really bonkers. Like everything, like the election itself has changed. Like at least the particulars of that have changed like a few times during the past few weeks to the point that we just kind of laughed because like it's like man plans God laughs sort of situation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one last thing I wanted to mention before I let you go is that you and I met at college at American University in Washington, D.C. I remember meeting you kind of early on, and I remember us like crank calling people at some point in the the good old days before caller ID. But I think we became friends when we worked together at this thing called the Phone-a-thon. It was essentially
Oh God.
a phone bank where
Yeah, yeah.
we would call alumni from American University and ask for donations.
Right.
The umbrella of the Office of Development, it was legit, and it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
But what do you have any like memories of that?
I just remember it was like awful. Like I don't know, like I remember it was shortly after like 9/11 happened and like for whatever reason like I remember one of my first phone banks like I opened up the program and like everything is like New York City and I'm like this is not going to go well. And there was just like these like weird awkward conversations like why are you calling me sort of thing.
Yeah,
But you never got away from it. Which is like ironic, is like now that like COVID hit, like that's essentially what this entire operation has become. Is just like calling strangers and trying to talk to
yeah.
them about things
And
they don't want to talk about.
I forgot all about that. And there were times where I couldn't make calls because I was just in tears and stitches, laughing at whatever. We're like the way that you were just so genuinely, but unwisely, just keep making these calls and mispronouncing people's last names, cracking up.
Oh man, we're old.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. Give my
Thank you,
best to
dude.
your family. And
Will do.
again, melforprogress.com. He's running for Congress in the state of New York to represent the 6th District of New York. And it's a little bit confusing on how to get there in terms of voting because of COVID and the various other litigation. But fuck it. melforprogress.com. And do all the best, man. I can't wait to see you. I hope to see you guys soon.
Hell yeah, thanks, dude. Appreciate it. Take care,
Yeah.
dude.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your very busy schedule.